This seat is out of what I believe to be a newer model square body truck. I have it all disassembled, and you guys missed that part because it was in a junkyard and got wet and damp, and I wanted it to get all dried out before we started working on it. This frame is in pretty good shape. Other than the springs, they're rusty. I'm going to do something about that. This grid, I've got a replacement. The covers are in actually not bad shape, other than they're shrunk up, so they're not really good for patterns, but I'm going to use them for a guide. The foam, not terrible. It needs to be repaired. There's been critters in there, a little mouser up here, but I think I'm going to use it. I'm going to repair the foam. This top metal is broke off on both sides right in here, and we'll fix that. Both of them broke. It had something laying on it that was heavy. You can see right there where it was pushed in. This will be a good place to start repairing these brackets because this is the foundation of our seat, that and the foam. I've got to clear this area out so I can weld it up. I normally don't use a razor blade for this. You'll see what I use later, but today I'm using this. This bracket is not broke because of rust. It does have a little bit of surface rust on it, but the reason it broke is because it had weight on it, had something laying on it, and it broke it off, and that pipe is very thin. This side has even less surface rust than the other side, so I'm pleased to see that. This is something that could smolder in your shop for days and then catch on fire. So be careful of that. There's one of the weld repairs. And here's the other side. Many levels of restoration you can do on the seat frame. This is as far as I'm wanting to go with it. I know it's not perfect, but it'll hold the rust back for many years. A beautiful new seat grid. Last one. Gonna be a tough one. Needs to stay up for me. Some fencing pliers. This wire is pretty tough. This is not wire, it's just a little foam piece or something. There you have it, easy enough. Beautiful new seat grid. Normally you would see burlap right here on top of this grid, and that's used so that the foam doesn't get damaged by the grid. But I'm using indoor-outdoor carpet this time. I was wanting to see if it would help stiffen the seat up a little bit. Yeah, this could be a problem. The hog rearing process is gonna be time consuming because I can't just go over it like you would normally and just pinch it on, so we'll have a little extra time on that part. Carpet's all secured down. It was quite painful to do that part. I got about 6 hog rings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just want to do a little test fit of the foam. This is the underside of the foam. It's nastified, a little rusty and stuff, so I'm going to take it outside, use a wire wheel, and clean it up really good. I'm only using this kind of for a base. We're going to add foam to it, but foam is expensive, so if I can use this, I will, and it won't hurt a thing. Off to a good start. Now we can repair this foam and add foam to it. Steaming will help revive the foam. When it gets flattened out, it's oval shaped. Little cells are all oval. When you steam it, it will return it to a circle shape and will help it poof up. I'm not great at doing this foam, so I traced it out on a piece of cardboard and I'm measuring up so I get the same height. When the repairs are done, I can make sure I'm pretty darn close to where it was before. And of course, it has been flattened out and messed up a little bit, but I'll compensate for that. There is a whole lot of foam repair that has to be done to this, so I'm going to show you one example of how I'm going to fix all the foam. This spot right here, this hole, we'll first cut it out. .36 grit on my little buffer. My new cutout little patch piece. I should be wearing rubber gloves. The glue is pretty good stuff. Now we'll do a little trim job here. .36 on my little die grinder. I pay attention to what way the wheel's turning, so it turns this way, and then I go this way, so it rubs it that way. And that's because my glue's a little fresh still. So there it is, that spot's all repaired. My fillet knife wasn't working so great, so You can also use a hacksaw blade. That's what I'm doing here. Here's our foam work pretty much done. I always usually go back and tweak it a little bit, but for the most part it's done. And it took a whole lot of patching on this old seat. This is the back of the bottom, and that's how bad a shape it was in. It needed a whole new patch there. And I'm sure this is a passenger side because it needed less of a patch, but still need to be fixed up pretty good. Most anything you do, you want to start in the very center. So I marked the center of this seat, and now I'm trying to figure out how wide I want my pleats and how long I'm going to need them. A lot of guys will mark this all out, and that's probably the better way to do it, but I just want to get the pleats made for right now, and they have to be long enough for the top and the bottom and wide enough for both. I already squared this fabric up using a, construction square to make sure everything's square before I draw out my pleats, but now I'm measuring it, the width, and I have to make it wider than it needs to be because each pleat you sew, you'll lose width of your final product. I allow 1/4 of an inch for each pleat, which is more than I need really. I think 1/8 would do it, but I'd rather have a little extra than be short. When you're rubbing this down, you don't want to put no dimples in it with your finger and stuff like that. And it needs to be on a flat surface like I have this on this cardboard, because anything that has a curve in it or something like that, if you put it on, it'll show up. Spray your glue even, don't glob it up. Pretty sure I always use more glue than necessary, but I think maybe the pleats will be more crisp like that, and I could be wrong. I've got a little glue on the vinyl, so mineral spirits I would think is the standard to get it off. It doesn't hurt the vinyl, but it'll get that glue off there. When I get to this point, I usually just leave it on a flat spot like this overnight and let the glue dry up really good. This is the 1/2 inch sew foam I'm using for the top and the back. On the sides, I'll use 1/4 inch. If you'll notice on this side, it's got like a mesh. On this side, it doesn't. This is the side that you glue to the vinyl, and then when you sew it through here, and it'll squeeze it and hold it for you. 1 3/4 and 3/4. That's the size pleats I'm making. You need to take your time making straight lines because people like straight lines. This is a China marker. It stays on here longer than chalk, but it's a lot harder to clean up, but that's what I'm using. And if you get the cheap Amazon ones, they don't work so great, but this is a Sharpie brand. It seems to be better. When you're done, and especially if you're not going to measure twice, just step back, look at everything, make sure it looks square, straight, and even. Now with both pieces marked, just another check. I overlapped them, just making sure everything looks good. Cut it in half, make it easier to sew up. Not in half, but where it needed to be cut. I want to make sure I know the way they go back, so I just mark this right here with an arrow. That way when I put them on the seat, like this will be on the bottom and this will be on the bottom, that way the lines match up nice. The way I try to keep a straight line is the width of this is the same width of the inside of my foot here. Keep an eye on your bobbin throughout this part because you don't want to run out halfway through one of the pleats. Want to know if you have straight lines? Look at the back side. I promise you, every single flaw will show up. The best way I found to make straight lines is just to go really slow, take your time, rest your eyes every so often. I think I can cut this down, staple this to a piece of cardboard, and just use this pattern. I think it's still pretty good. Little hot. Could use some gloves, but suck it up, I guess. I did use the pattern, but I also did have to modify it a little bit. I'm going to trace the cardboard. I removed the old fabric from the pattern because I don't need it anymore. I got this. And when my final cut is done, it'll be on the inside of that chalk line. I did sew around the edge of these just like everything else, and now we can attach them to this. This is the other side, and you can see I've got everything labeled and arrows and everything how it's supposed to be so I don't get confused. First I just sew it like this, normal. There's a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the back, as you can see. Next I add a top stitch, and that's what that is there, a top stitch. The reason for that is because it looks nice. Not only that, it makes it stronger because you're sewing over top of that and you're folding your edge over like that, so you're catching it twice basically when you sew it. This is called a presser foot, and you can sew a top stitch without it, but it's much easier with it. See, this is a spring-loaded guide basically. As you sew, this little guide stays right in the crack and keeps you on track like a moose on crack, and you get a straight line. This is a 3/16 width. You can get it wider or more narrow if you need to. Just doing a final check before I make this last piece in the middle, because if I had to make an adjustment right now is the time to do it. I could make this bottom just a little bit wider or a little bit more narrow, but everything is looking like it's right on track, so should work out the way I had it planned. This part is all sewed up now. We'll work on this back section here. That'll be the next step. I'm gonna take this measurement off the back of the frame. 54 and 3/4, so it needs to be 55 and 3/4 for a 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. I like to reinforce this part because it rubs on metal in the back of the seat. Isn't that nice? And now it's super tough. Make sure you mark center on both parts and start in the middle like always. This little notching tool I thought I would show you. I got it marked with a pen, but I'm just demonstrating. The old timers just use scissors, I think, or whatever, chalk, whatever it takes. All sewed up. A top stitch for strength. You're not going to be able to see it back here. I always make this part right here longer, this direction, and then when I get the seat cover on and all fitted, I'll cut this to the size that it needs to be. Just kind of a safety precaution. I was able to work this pattern out so I could use it, heat gunned it, laid it flat on the cardboard, stapled it down, then around the edge, it's not as wide as I needed. I think that's a 3/8 gap, and I needed a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I just used a marker and traced it, and that gave me the extra distance I needed to make it a 1/2 inch. I'm gonna make 2 of these, and they're gonna be on 1/4 inch sew foam. These 2 pieces ready to go, and that's a 1/4 inch sew foam instead of a 1/2 inch for around the sides. You don't need the 1/2 inch. These 2 pieces have to be attached first. So I'll do a French seam. We'll first put it like this. I'll sew it a 1/2 inch, and then I'll show you what we do from there. Now with these 2 pieces sewn together, what you'll do is spread them out like this, and I'll put this piece in the center right there, and then I will top stitch it on that other side. I always just use the same material I'm using. That way, if the threads spread out here, like you could see through just a little bit, you won't notice because the same color material's in behind it. They do make a special material for doing this, but I don't think I need it. Also, the way it stretches, see, when I do this, I make it so it doesn't stretch the part. If it has 2-way stretch, which this does, I do it like that so it's not stretchy. So this is what I was looking for. You don't want to lock in threads past the 1/2 inch up or down like that. Some people will start off to the side here, start sewing, and then go up like that. I don't really find that to be necessary as long as I just watch what I'm doing. Typically what you want to do is notch the fabric, and when you're sewing it, line the notches up. But I'm just not that good, so I just staple it. It takes longer because you have to go back out and take the staples back out. Not go back out, but you gotta go back, take the staples back out. To me, it's worth it. I don't want to screw it up, and I like to see and make sure everything's fitting right before I sew it. If you do it this way, don't make the mistake of stapling it in further than a 1/2 inch, because then you'll have a staple on the other side where you sewed, and that's not cool. all sewed up. Next, we've got to make some welt to hold it in the front, and then it has like a clip thing on the back, so we'll sew that on last. But now it's time for the welt and fit it on the foam. See what it looks like. I cut this vinyl 1.5 inches wide and as long as I needed it. This is welt cord. This is a foot made for welt. See the curve in it on the bottom? And it fits directly onto the welt. Whoop! Like this. And the foot will just gallop along and sew it right next to it. Now this will be sewn on to here on the bottom, about like this, and the hog rings then will go around this welt to hold it to the frame. I've zip tied it in several spots to hold it, and then I clamp the back. The reason for that is so that I can flip it over and see how the foam looks and see if I have to make any adjustments there. These zip ties will come out, and when they do, I'll just replace them with hog rings on final assembly. These clamps are here because, like I said, this piece is longer, and I got to figure out where exactly this C-channel is going to go that locks in. I want to cut this just the right length. To me, the foam is so important. If it's not done just exactly right, it makes the seat not look so good. What I'm seeing is just right through here on both sides. Just needs to be filled in there a little. This seems to be bulging out a little bit here. That's probably where I repaired it. So take it back off, fix this foam, sew on the C-channel, and do the final assembly. This J-channel is blue and you won't see it, but just for the heck of it anyways, I'll make sure you can't tell it was blue if somebody happens to peek back there. This will be a quick way to hide it. A zipper foot, they make a left and right. I use it on this channel because it'll get real close to this edge right here. Foaming sucks, but it's a very important part of the job. Have you ever seen a nice seat cover and then it has like voids in it where there's not foam, or bulges here and there? The foam's got to be right for the seat to look good. Hopefully this will be the last time we have to put this on and take it off. Hopefully. When you're hog ringing, what I think you're wanting to do, this is maybe just my opinion, but if it feels tight, you need to pull this fabric, kind of pull it the direction of the hog rings and loosen it up so that it's not tugging real crazy on the vinyl. If everything doesn't look perfect when you first get it on there, don't panic. Just go around here and squeeze and rub things out the right way. And give it some time. The vinyl will stretch and it'll look better after just a couple hours. But sometimes when you first get it on, you think, oh no, but don't panic, it'll be all right. Starting on the back, I'm gonna sew these pieces together. These will be the two outside, this the middle, of course. This is the seat bottom, and this is a lance that I'm having to make for the seat back. What I did was draw lines here and here to show where the inserts went. That way, hopefully everything's gonna line up. These are the pieces I sewed together, and the challenge here is, see, this is, you gotta stretch this somewhat to make it line up, and that's the trick. I think what I'm gonna end up doing is putting it on here and stapling it in place. You could draw every single line out. I'm not gonna take that route. That worked out good. Everything seemed to be matching up. See how the back is bacon? And you gotta stretch it to get it right. The front, you don't have to do that any longer because this piece is holding it in place. I did top stitch that just for strength. Obviously not for looks because you're not even gonna see it. I really wasted a lot of extra material on this project. This was kind of an afterthought. I'm gonna cut this top off and do a little design up there. Don't really need to do that. It can get expensive. First, I'll sew this little strip on. Do any of you know what I'm going for here? And this will be the final piece right here. I'll attach it to this one. And this is what I was looking for on the back of the seat. This is gonna be a little bit difficult for me, so what I did was take some old scraps that I screwed up before and sewed up the ends, this end and also the other end down there, to try and practice and see how everything's gonna fit and measure the pattern because the old one was shrunk. I'd rather take the time, practice, and use some old material to see that everything's gonna work out instead of screwing up the two big pieces. One big piece in the front, one big piece in the back. So that's still a possibility, but hopefully it won't happen. Using this pattern I made, I will cut both sides of the seat cover front. Checking and rechecking and checking again. I am so stressed out right now. And I mean stressed out. And that is because if something goes wrong, these two pieces right here are not even gonna be good for a dog bed. All sewn up and one piece ready to slip on to the foam. This plastic is strictly being used to help the cover slip down on this top because it's tight. I'll slip the metal rods in here and then we can hog ring it together. I'm spacing them every 5 inches, approximately. This is time consuming, so I'll show you how I do one. See, the normal lancing here is just a thin piece of fabric. I doubled this up, made it extra strong, just because it's just kind of what I do. Sticking a hole in it for the hog ring. Because everything is so thick, it's tough to get it together. You couldn't just use the pliers, you have to do it this way. Now we'll cinch her down here. Can't really use the high ring pliers like they're designed to be used for this application. And then I just turn it down like that so it's nice and flat here. Just a quick sanding with 320. Now scuffing it up with a Scotch-Brite pad. This is probably a 400 grit, if I were to guess. Scuff it pretty good, all on the edges and everything. Sanding and scuffing promotes mechanical adhesion. This will promote a chemical adhesion. It is an adhesion promoter. Now we can make them black. Those should look better than being blue. Time to install new seat belt bezels. This seat did not come with any bezels. They must have been broke or stolen or something, so we'll install these. Just cut a little slit here, right in the very middle. This is a brand new razor blade, so it's good and sharp. I'll do the other side the same, then we'll flip the seat over. The way these work, this will go on the top, this one will slide from the bottom and it'll squeeze up and go click click as tight as it needs to go. Before I put the bezel on, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on these threads to make sure that they don't unwind on me, which I don't think they would anyways, but better to be safe than sorry. I'm going to do the back side too. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to. We'll get these mounted up. There, just hold that bar apart. The bar apart? Yeah, so it doesn't cut the seat. Just go on down if you can, down to that pole, see it?
Yeah.
Are you able to do it?
Yeah.
I got mine.
I'm down there.
Let's see if the pleats line up. Moment of truth. Ooh, they do. That's good. Everything lined up pretty good. I like the color combination on this seat. I wanted to show how this mechanism works before I put the plastic cover on it. If you're cruising down the road and you hit something, inertia will slide this forward like that and it'll lock the seat so it can't fold. And it's got two levels, two notches. See there? That'll catch it on. And that'll prevent the seat from coming forward like that and crushing you up. These are the screws for the plastic cover. I thought I'd just clean them up a little bit. I cleaned them up and now I'm gonna use permanent marker again like I did on that black trim just to make them freshen them up a little bit. Paint would just chip off of these screws anyways. You could have them recoated or get new ones, but I think this works good. Now, depending on the level of restoration a person wanted, you might want to do something different, as in get new stainless steel hardware. Last piece. I'm letting it sit out here in the sun just a little while, see if I can get the wrinkles out. Letting it sit out in the sun seems to work much better than a heat gun or a steamer, in my opinion. That's it for this one. We have a newly reupholstered Chevrolet square body seat, and I am happy with the way it turned out. I want to thank everyone for watching. I am the one and only infamous Kentucky Yankee, without a doubt. We'll see you next time.